Alexi Treviso's mother is actually making things worse for her, and Alexi's on her way to college. We're going to talk about all that in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. The pretend sofa is back there behind me. We've had to put Roscoe and his own sofa on top of the sofa. Although it is dark, you might not be able to see it, but he is there. He's got his little owl to keep him company. And my name's Paul if you're new to the channel. Now what we're going to be talking about specifically today is Alexi Treviso, some updates in that. Recently she did her first court appearance and there were some arguments made there, and what we're going to do is I've taken some video clips out of that and I want to use them as talking points for commentary and whatnot. Now you can view the whole hearing in its entirety at Law and Crime on their channel. So it is very interesting, and just to be prepared for a lot of trolls coming in and muting them and whatnot, which we will discuss in this video. So that being said, what we'll do is, like I said, is we'll put up clips, I'll talk about it, and we'll go about it that way. Now before we do get started with all that, I would like to open the doors and fluff up both sofas actually, and make a warm sofa welcome for today's sponsor who is helping to make this video possible. So y'all, I partnered with Toon Blast to make this video possible. I have absolutely fallen in love with this game, and I think you will too. The essence of the game is you're solving puzzles by blasting cubes and creating powerful combos to pass different levels. It's a free-to-play mobile game. It's available on all devices. So there are literally over 7,000 levels to this game, y'all. Okay, it is never ending, which I love. Now another thing that I absolutely love about this is, for me at least, it's like a throwback to Saturday morning cartoons. So the little cute characters and the graphics and the sound effects, all that kind of stuff, it's total nostalgia for me. And this is what I'm talking about. Listen to that. It's so cute, right? Whether I'm like on the sofa with Roscoe playing the game, cuddled up in my little blankie on a Saturday morning, or just playing it wherever, I absolutely love it. Now another cool thing about it is you can play by yourself or you can join teams to play that way as well. Now here are some major selling points for me and cool features. First of all, no Wi-Fi is needed. So if I'm wanting to hang out in my car while I'm running boring errands before I go into the next place and play my game and be in my own little world, you totally can, okay? And even better, there's no ads that disrupt your gameplay. I absolutely cannot stand that when that happens, and I love this about that game, that they are so mindful about that. Now there's also a lot of fun and challenging mini games you can play to claim rewards. The mini games are so unique and bring such a fresh spin to the game within the game. Also, it is super easy to learn. I mean, y'all, first of all, if I can get it, okay, let's just go ahead and call it out. Anybody can, okay? I call into it just like that. It's challenging enough to make it feel like it's actually doing something good for me and keeping, you know, the old cobwebs off the brain, but it also is letting me just have fun and enjoy it and not feel like I'm playing some high anxiety, stressful game. Now you can download the game through my link and you're gonna get 3 hours of unlimited lives and 100 free coins. So don't forget to download Toon Blast for free by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the pinned comment. So thank you again to Toon Blast for making this video possible. Again, just check out all their stuff, it's down below. Okay, now before we jump into the video clips, let's just do a very quick recap for those who have not been following this case. So again, this is Alexi Treviso. Now she presented to the emergency room with back pain, complaining of back pain. It turns out she was actually in labor. So she would eventually go to the bathroom, lock herself in there, and give birth to a baby boy, whom she would wrap up in plastic trash bags and put in the bottom of one of the trash cans and then go back to her room. Now herein lies the whole, I don't even know if you want to call it question of the case, but her question of the case is she is saying that she didn't know she was pregnant and that, you know, it's the hospital's fault, so on and so forth. They didn't tell her, and you know, the baby was stillborn, whole 9 yards. Now her mother was present for this, and that's also causing complications for her case now, which we'll talk about that as well. So again, that's a very quick overview. There's a lot of other things. A lot of video footage was released of this, of her running to the bathroom, of her being interviewed and talking to cops in the emergency room, and that is also at the center of some of the clips that we're going to be watching today, and I'll give context to them as we move through it. Now again, keep in mind that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a cop, I'm not that fancy credential stuff, okay? These are just my opinions, and they're coming from the sofa from me watching too much YouTube, okay, Lord. So anyways, just know that they're just my opinions. I urge you to look into this yourself, come to your own conclusions, and talk about those things down in the comment section below. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we'll start off with the first clip.
as a way to resolve this issue rather than have a lengthy hearing today over whether or not this case has nationwide publicity, countywide publicity, statewide publicity, or world publicity. It has all of them, frankly. So trying to move to another jurisdiction in New Mexico may not be very suitable, since the whole state has some of the same media sources, and particular social media has been so explicit in this particular instance. That's the solution I propose.
Okay, now I wanted to put this clip in here just to briefly talk about that dynamic of not just this case, but cases like it, where you get into this extreme media exposure. In this case specifically, where you have, the videotapes that we'll talk about a little bit of her running to the bathroom, of her talking to police, of them saying some what I would consider incriminating things on video that have been massively leaked. Now, I would argue with her attorney here. He's talking about just the counties and whatnot, and of course that is what it comes down to. These have to take place, in these general areas. But I mean, this case right here, when you look up viral, is next to it, okay? So I'm just like, yeah, good luck with that. But we've seen these other cases that get this huge international attention, and they still have to go to trial and play out in court and whatnot. And that's one of the things that I find as a viewer of a true crime, of cases, of watching, people's lives unfold in this manner is, the fine line between having access so that things can be transparent, accountability and that type of thing, and then making it so that it can still go through the justice system. It's a very fine line. And so some of the things that have taken place in this particular hearing today, they're going to be reconvening when the judge goes over stuff, gets more information in it, this being one of them. Now let's go ahead on to that next clip.
So we may be able to get it done within 4 weeks if we're not having to do.
So you're counting the 6 weeks. A good part of that you're counting also pulling the jury, right?
I am.
Okay. So the actual trial portion won't be 6 weeks. You were counting for finding a jury to sit.
Right. I counted 2 weeks for jury selection.
Okay.
Now, when I heard this, to me, I was just like, it sounded like such a short trial, right? Where I was like 6 weeks, and a couple of it's for the jury. Yeah, but I guess that would be a month or whatever. And of course, this is give or take. You never know how that plays out. But I mean, one of these things that to me from the outside in, again, from non-professional sofa opinion with an owl on a sofa, is I'm just like, there seems like there'd be so much information in this and so many things. Like, how could you do this in that amount of time? But again, I'm not doing this professionally, right? So those are just sofa opinions on that. Now, look, before we get any further into this, okay, I'm going to sum up what a large portion of this hearing was, okay, with just a few clips so you can get the gist if you haven't watched it. I want you to enjoy it as much as we did when we watched it happening in person. So roll tape.
You're muted, Mr. Mitchell.
Let's do the
Mr. Mitchell, I was muted. You're muted. Something happened. I don't know what. Can you repeat everything you just said? I am sorry. You just went mute again. I'm having trouble with this. I think it's our system. Okay, go ahead.
This, right, y'all, it was the whole way through. It was the whole way through. I felt like I was watching myself, okay, because I am not this bad with Zoom meetings and stuff, but almost. Now, I do believe what was actually going on here is they had trolls getting in here, because towards the end of the hearing, somebody was like making all these noises and stuff like that, and I think people were just messing with them. Now, you always have, especially if you work from home, stuff like that, and you're on these, people, for as much as we had to rely on this technology, people seemingly don't know how to mute and unmute and turn their video cameras on and off at proper times, and it's just funny when you see it play out in the court system like this. I think we all remember the attorney who put the cat filter on and had to sit there and do the hearing or whatever it was with the cat filter. And he was like, I'm not really a cat. And my favorite comment from that, I don't know who said, I'm just remembering it, was, I'm not a cat is the most cat thing ever said. You got to love it. Okay, let's go on to the next clip.
And then there's a videotape that the state doesn't have that I'm aware of, nor do I have, but I've seen on people send it on social media. It's from Artesia General Hospital, and it's a videotape of my client going from a examining room down the hall to the bathroom and then coming back. Another Artesia police officer took that tape, figured out a time schedule. That's Exhibit G, a timeline. I believe that was Officer Minter, and I attached his report showing the timeline. And then there's the videotape that we seek to suppress, where police officers, the doctor, and my client are and her mother are in the examining room. That's the Miranda issues. And then I did a timeline of events to give the court.
Okay, so I wanted to put this up here because he's outlined or laying out, whatever you want to say, the two videotapes that he's talking about. And it's the one where she's running to the bathroom, and that's where she's left the emergency room or wherever she's at, going to the bathroom, she locks herself in there. We now know she gave birth. And then the other one is a videotape of the conversation of in the emergency room when she's being detained. Her mother's in there. They're finding out. We're seeing this moment, and how rare is this for us to see these moments of the doctor comes in, we found a deceased baby in the garbage can in the bathroom you were just in. Her mother's shocked. Alexi, I mean, it's like, oh my God, right? It gives me goosebumps. And so they're wanting to suppress these. Now we'll get a little bit more into their reasonings and whatnot. So let's continue to watch the various footage.
That they told her she was detained, could not leave, and for purposes of Miranda, I would argue in custody and not free to leave, which means that at no time is there anything read about Miranda, which gets us to the suppression issue. But back to the privilege.
I already claimed I ain't no lawyer, okay? He just threw out a whole bunch of stuff. Miranda, suppression, privilege, I mean, all sorts of stuff. But what he's talking about essentially is remember in this room where these statements are made and whatnot, and this is where you're going to hear in a second, might even be the next clip or the next couple, where, because we'll get into it. But essentially, we're getting into the conversation about how the mother is complicating things. Now, again, I don't know these people. This is all alleged. This is my opinion. But even when I watch this play out and the mother's reaction, which take away personal feelings about how we might feel about the situation, Alexi, her mother, whatever, right? Any parent who is going to allegedly find out some bombshell information about their child is going to have some reaction, right? I get that. I give that to them. However, I still have a hard time believing that nobody knew she was pregnant. So there's that, again, my opinion only. Secondly, to then go based on that, if that is true, of like there was even a question of it, because the mother kind of lets us know there was a question of it by what she says when she's like, I told you to be truthful. I told you what happens to those girls who do this to their babies. So it's almost like, okay, hello, has this conversation taken place? And so because of this, again, she's going to complicate things. But even if her presence in the room didn't mess that up, these words that she's saying cast a lot of doubt on the story they're now trying to come up with. So let's continue.
And that's where we get into the Miranda issues. So for the privilege, I'm saying everything's privileged up to the time she goes into the bathroom. Everything's privileged after she comes out, because it's all part of the privilege.
Now, again, remember with situations like this, and this is going to be one of those things where if you just look at this case from a legal perspective, because, you have things such as HIPAA and, a doctor-patient privilege and, all this kind of stuff. And so it is kind of like, when you look at it like, oh yeah, how does this work? Like, how is, this videotape from the hospital put out there? We know, of course, some of this is like a gray line because we'll hear why in a second, but it's also part of a case that now becomes Freedom of Information Act, that type of stuff, right? And again, I don't know all the legality to it. I'm just speaking more like from an onlooker who's like, yeah, how does that work? When you go to the doctor, like, where do you draw the line at this, that, or the other? Now my take on it, of course, is, well, whatever it takes to bring justice forth, the way justice needs to be brought forth. Now, I'm not saying violate somebody's rights or something like that. But this case particular, I do agree with what the state has to say as to why they don't consider there to be a Miranda issue. They don't consider there to be a privilege issue, any of that stuff. And so let's go ahead and get into that.
The truth is, it got out. All these records, all these videos were out. Now, somebody from Artesia had to disclose that. Every one of them gave a statement to police. They shouldn't have without a waiver. They all gave records they shouldn't have without a waiver. They gave a video they shouldn't have without a waiver.
And again, before we get into some of what the state says, and you hear him saying they don't have the waiver, they're putting this out there, they're putting it out. And remember also, there's all this information that was released on the police interviews with the nurses and people like that. And so I'm very curious from a legal perspective to see when we get into the trial, because definitely a trial, right? How that will play out. Again, just from a legal point of view and removing like any kind of emotion from it, that aspect of the case will be very interesting and educating for me, because part of the legal process in these trials is what interests me in, watching these cases play out the way they do. Now let's go ahead on and hear what the state has to say now.
In their motion, raised three issues. They raised the issue of Miranda, they raised the issue of HIPAA, and they raised the issue of privilege by the rule.
Mhm.
Let me start with the issue of Miranda.
Okay.
The issue of Miranda, she was not in custody. Statements that she made when some police were there were actually statements initially that she blurted out. Officers asked her no questions. And then her mother, who is present with her in the treating room the entire time, is saying things to her. And the officers actually tell the mother to stop, that she, has Miranda rights and that she should be advised. And so we think the Miranda issue is really not an issue. There's not a violation of Miranda. And we put that in our response. The second thing is HIPAA. The defense puts HIPAA in here. HIPAA is really a red herring. Has nothing to do with the criminal case. There's no remedy. It's not a constitutional protection. It's a statutory protection in which a penalty can be against the facility, the physician, and that is the civil suit that 2 civil suits, I believe, that defense counsel has already.
Yeah, and I think
Okay, so one key ingredient of this that the state is arguing here is the Miranda. And that's one thing that I was talking about earlier where, she's not in custody and she's blurting this stuff out and the mother's having this conversation and you see officers talking about, basically being like, look, you need to be quiet, right? But no. A lot of interest that I've seen in the comment section of my own interest is the mother-daughter dynamic and what we saw play out on just the little bit that we've seen of them, right? And so this is one of those cases where it seems like the mother could be making it worse for the daughter, right? On several levels. First of all, with the statements that were made in the hospital, the whole 9 yards, right? The way she was talking to her, all of that. Now, another issue brought up here is this HIPAA, which to me sounds like, the state's arguing here is that, hey, you know what? Guess what? That's between those two. And remember, they do have, and by they, I mean Treviso's side, her mother, whoever, has these civil suits going on. So what would be interesting is to see a situation like this. And again, I don't know how this works. So this is something we might need, some fancy lawyer talk for. If the criminal thing is found guilty, but they also get a civil suit against the hospital. You know what I mean? Type thing. Does one cancel the other out? Like, how does that work? I don't know. But again, from a legal perspective, that would be interesting to see how that could potentially play out.
You've already, by your own actions, letting your own mother be there, waived that privilege. So statements that are made are not going to be protected under this rule.
Now, rule she's specifically talking about is having other parties present or other people present besides just you or whatever. Well, her mother's in the room. Remember this. So again, mom's all up in the mix here and is not making this any better for her. It's very similar. It reminds me, if you followed my video or the case that came out previously of Mackenzie Shirilla, who was convicted recently of taking the life of her boyfriend, her late boyfriend, and her friend in the car. And her mother got up during sentencing and gave a speech and spoke, and it was really, really bad. And the judge was reprimanding the mother and really did not do her daughters any favor. The same type vibe I'm getting here, right? And again, I don't personally know these people, so this is just my own personal judgment from what I've seen on the surface level. So there's that. Let's continue.
Yeah. My client is trying to stay at home, and stay and take classes from the university. So we tried to avoid that problem this semester because I didn't have an order and hadn't had this heard before then. But I'm asking that the court take a look at the motion and the state's response, because one, I don't believe we can order that in that fashion because of the cases I cited to the court, including Johnson and some other cases. And two, she has not violated that whatsoever. The judge allowed them to communicate via telephone and or gosh, there's so many different media ways to communicate, but they couldn't be in person. And she's honored that. She doesn't go out at all other than to come to my office. The court allowed her to go see her grandparents. And other than that, she's at home. She doesn't go out. You don't see her at Walmart, anywhere else. But going to college and of course, her professors, even though she's doing this by Zoom, I'm not sure what they're going to require when it comes time for examinations as to whether she can do those via that method or she has to go to down to the university and take examinations. We're trying to avoid all those problems this semester, but in any event, sorry, we have some time to consider this, Judge, but wow. In case you need to have more time to look at it, or the state needs more time. But I would ask that restriction of being able to have contact and with her boyfriend be removed, and that and the other reason for bringing this is I didn't want her to get in trouble in another city because they run across each other in a classroom or on the campus, even if it were by accident.
Okay, so few things here. Now, I'd already seen some court documents that came out about her wanting to go to school and all this, and it was like, what? Okay, really? You know, that's pretty ballsy. Yikes. It gives me, like, just embarrassed secondhand cringe just thinking about it. I'm just imagining myself in her shoes, and I'm like, I would be afraid to leave the house. That being said, so clearly she's doing this. She's been doing the, online thing. Now, remember, she's out on, like, bail, bond, whatever you want to call it. And so they're trying to get it to where she can go to in-campus or whatever. Now, there's also the whole thing of having to keep, stay away from the boyfriend and all this. So a couple of things here. Can you imagine the conversations? We're all human, right? And now when we get to the part of being like, okay, well, they just can't talk about the case. I mean, come on, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, please. I just don't see that happening. But also on that note, I'm just trying to imagine going off to college in person with this going on. Now, I was already thinking, oh my God, can you imagine her on like a Zoom thing with the class? People will be trolling. People are going to have an opinion. Now, again, not guilty until, no, I'm sorry, what is it? Innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. You know what I'm saying? So that whole dynamic, I believe in. It's like, yeah, absolutely. She has every right to attend school or whatever. If the circumstances of the evidence were different, I would feel probably a little bit differently about it. If there was a question, even if we go in the face value of maybe, let's go with her. Okay, she didn't know. I mean, come on, right? The baby ended up in the bottom of a garbage can wrapped up in a trash bag. What do you say to that? Even if it was stillborn. Even if he was stillborn, I'm sorry. What do you say to that? Can you imagine going and sitting in a classroom this fresh off of it? Okay, this fresh. No, I can't imagine. Okay, so let's continue. We only got a few more clips here. Let's continue.
Well, I would really like to look at this more, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to modify the conditions of release. I'll allow her to go. It's New Mexico State and Las Cruces, right?
That's correct, Your Honor. It is.
Big university, huge. I don't know what the student count is, but I'm sure it's several thousand. Las Cruces is a sizable city. I personally, counsel, I'm really trying to get in my mind how you can invoke a domestic violence prohibition against personal contact. First off, nobody's invoked the DV statute. There's been no allegation of domestic violence. I don't think that translates into this. I really don't. My gut reaction is that does not translate. Granted, you can order that anybody who's under charges cannot commit any further criminal acts. And I'd certainly think that's absolutely reasonable. She should get her conditions revoked if she's gets charged with any further criminal acts, but I don't see how the DV statutes can even be applied in this case, notwithstanding what Judge Schubert said originally or anything else. Certainly, if she commits any other criminal act, she should have her conditions of release reviewed, absolutely. But I really don't think that a DV statute defining continuing personal relationship and prohibiting such can be translated into this situation. That's my read on it. Honestly, I think you can stretch that. I do advise that she may not commit any other criminal acts of any sort. I don't want her to get a traffic ticket or anything else. I'll let her go to Mexico State. That's a big, big university.
Thank you, Judge. I'll do an order on it. Judge, how many days or weeks may Ms. Luce and I have to do findings and
Okay, so now did you hear the thing at the end of the people doing whatever those little interrupting noises are? Now, a couple of things on this. So first of all, you heard the judge, like, no more, she can't do any other criminal acts. Thank God. Doesn't even want to get a traffic ticket. Now, this could be the rope that she hangs herself with, because here's the thing, and I'm not just speaking, obviously this is about Alexi, this is her case, but this is oftentimes when we see this, especially in younger defendants who, they're young, right? They're still out there learning. If they've had parents that have kind of cleaned up their messes along the way, they don't have this sense of the severity of the situation they're in. And I'm not sure if Alexi is going to really have that, because her mother, we can already see, has pivoted that this is not her fault. It's the hospitals, it's the cops, it's everybody else's. So she's going to go off to school. Now, clearly she can actually go physically to campus. Her boyfriend's going to be there, so on and so forth. And it's almost like this, this might not be real because it's way out there, or this won't happen, to this false sense of reality, and again, to me, unless they get some really good expert witnesses up there, and what they will say, I don't know, right? We already know that the lawyer is discussing the fact of, these drugs were given and this, that, and the other. But, just from the little bit that I've heard from whether people in the comment sections who work in the field, doctors, nurses, people of this internal medicine, things of this nature, that look, we got to see the numbers on the chemicals, things in her body and the babies and all this kind of stuff. Because a lot of these drugs are usually given to women. And so I would almost sit here and say it might not be too long before something else happens, because she's going to have a lot of rope to hang herself with. If she's out and about and doing college things, come on, right? And then also, imagine like your first love, your boyfriend at this age, and now you're in a situation with him where you can't, talk to him about this or do this or that. It's going to be very tough, and especially if she's coming from a place of no accountability, of this wasn't your fault. We don't know what conversations are going on behind closed doors at her home, right? So, there's that. But just what we see so far, like in the arrest video where the mother's like, I'm coming after the police department too, and it's just like, take the temperature, kind of a thing. You got to understand, you can't just absolve your daughter from any responsibility, but also, of course, it's in the mother's best interest to not make her daughter any more responsible in a public place. You know what I'm saying? She's clearly already learned that lesson. So that being said, now actually today, and I'll put a screenshot of it up here, I think it was Daily Mail, where a petition's going around signing to have the school not let her attend or something like that. This is going to be very interesting. You can bet your bazooka that there is going to be some kind of backlash, of protesting if she goes to the school. It's almost guaranteed, right? It's going to be very interesting because people are already upset online before it's even happening, right? So, imagine her being somewhere like that where people can learn her schedule and go approach her, and I'm not suggesting that by any means, but I just see this coming down the pipeline. I would personally be nervous for my own safety. I would not want to be out in a public setting like that if I didn't have to be. I would 100% opt for online courses, and I personally would be putting this on hold to some level. What that would be, I don't know, and what that choice would look like, I don't know. I'm not in the situation. So, that being said, the saga continues, right? Now, they're obviously going to come back with some of this other stuff, and a lot of how this will play out in court, just the same way we see with all these other cases, will be done in these hearings leading up to, as far as what can be admitted, what can't be. And him trying to get all this video stuff and all that type of stuff thrown out, if it gets thrown out, come on. But again, I just come back down to, why was the baby put in a bag at the bottom of a garbage can? It doesn't add up. It's not passing the sniff test. Thank you again to Toon Blast as well for making this video possible. Remember to use the link in the description to download it. You're going to get 3 hours of unlimited lives and 100 free coins to play. So again, let me know what you think down in the comment section. I greatly appreciate it if you are still here watching. And Roscoe says thank you. He's now on my arms. He does ask that you drop some sofas in the comment section for him, because he just, kind of likes that. And until we meet down in the said comment section to continue the said commentary on the commenting in the comment section, I'll see y'all there.